Hello everyone, my name is Benina Albershti, and this is my presentation for my article, Costs of Caring and Why People Turn Away from Empathy. First, we must define what is empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of others, and this research investigates why people sometimes avoid empathy despite its social value. The study is extensive, including multiple experiments designed to uncover the cognitive and emotional factors influencing empathetic engagement. The main goal of the study was to understand why people sometimes choose not to engage in empathy and whether avoidance can be reduced through interventions targeting perceived cognitive costs. Cameron and the group explored both the mental effort and emotional strain involved. Studies 1 to 3 were the empathy selection task. In studies 1 and 2, participants were presented with two decks of cards. One deck asked them to respond objectively, noting only age and gender. The other required writing about the person's feelings, engaging in empathy. Researchers measured which deck participants preferred, giving insight into spontaneous empathy choices. Study 3 continued this approach to further validate the task. It assessed whether participants' choices reflected genuine avoidance or random selection, confirming that avoidance behavior was consistent and meaningful. The key findings from studies 1 to 3 showed that people often avoided empathy. Cognitive and emotional costs contribute to people feeling empathetic or not, or engaging in it. And the results of studies 1 through 3 showed that people frequently avoided the empathy deck. Cameron and the group interpreted this as evidence that empathy has cognitive and emotional costs, which influence behavior even when participants value empathy in principle. Studies 4 to 6 explored whether avoidance happens to prevent vicarious distress. The task was similar to earlier studies, but images were emotionally balanced, either happy or angry. People had to choose between one or other. In Study 6, participants viewed targets prior to making a choice, and even then, people avoided the empathy option, highlighting the strong motivation to avoid being empathetic. The key findings show that these studies prove that avoidance can persist even when participants see the targets in advance, suggesting a strong motivated response. Cameron and the group also found that offering rewards or increasing perceived efficacy could reduce avoidance, showing that the costs can be offset under the right conditions, such as incentives. The summary of the study results: empathy is valuable but taxing. Avoidance is motivated by cognitive and emotional costs. And additional studies explored varied empathy contexts. To summarize, Cameron and the group showed that empathy is mentally and emotionally demanding. Avoidance is motivated and consistent across all the studies. The 8 studies each explored unique contexts such as avoidance of emotional verbalization, varying empathetic demand, or manipulating efficacy, reinforcing that empathy costs shape engagement but can be influenced by interventions. My personal reflection is that the study is very insightful. It's very realistic in presenting empathy. Cameron and the group show that avoidance is rational and understandable. It doesn't make you a horrible person to avoid empathetic situations. The multiple studies, including the 8 different ones, provide robust evidence across different tasks and contexts. It's clear and practical. The multiple studies strengthen the evidence, and it's a very realistic approach. The strengths are the cognitive focus and how it connects effort to avoidance, emotional consideration, how avoidance can be protective, and it acknowledges emotional fatigue. Cameron and the group frame this as normal protective behavior rather than a moral failing. More strengths are its realistic approach and broad applicability. Where it could be better is that it could be more diverse, it could connect cognitive costs to daily life, and everyday scenarios could be more helpful instead of, showing a card of someone happy or sad. People's emotional motivation might differ as well. My personal reflection is that I recognize sometimes I might choose to avoid empathetic situations, but I don't avoid empathy in general. And it doesn't make somebody a bad person to do so. It provides insight into how empathy avoidance can affect communication, conflict, and connection with others. It also helps me better understand my own reactions to emotionally difficult situations and why empathy can sometimes feel overwhelming. Application in daily life encourages greater awareness of when and why people avoid empathy. It helps guide more patient and understanding interactions, supports healthier emotional boundaries, improves communication, and interventions like increasing perceived efficacy or managing task complexity can reduce avoidance in personal and professional settings. In summary, Cameron and the group show that empathy is valuable but mentally and emotionally demanding. Avoidance is motivated and understandable. Their findings, including the 8 additional experiments, suggest that practical strategies to reduce avoidance and increase engagement are helpful. Thank you so much for listening.